Thank you for having us. Dana, do we get to say a word about the room that you're in at the moment?
Oh, we certainly can, certainly. So I am here at Raymond Vineyards, and this is known as the Red Room. This is one of Jean-Charles, our president's favorite rooms. He designed and decorated it himself. It is very interesting to be in here. So anyway, I thought I'd choose a different room this time than I did last time. So that's where we are.
Well, the point about the chandelier and the red velvet sofa and all these wonky things that go on in that place are just amazing to me. But thank you all for being here this afternoon. This is our second go round at this. So for some of you, welcome back. And for the rest of you, welcome. We're really thrilled to be doing this. Yeah, it is still summer, so we chose to do summer wines. I don't know how hot it is where you are, but Dana's fighting fires out in Napa, and it's 90 degrees where I am. So drinking some hot, cold weather wine just doesn't sound terribly appealing at the moment. So we chose Chardonnay and Rosé. And we thought maybe what we would do is kind of do a little see what you like best kind of thing, where we would do the old world and the new world and let you compare the Chardonnays from the old world and the new world, and then the Rosés from the old world and the new world, and maybe talk about what some of those differences are that you can expect, and yeah, see which one you like better. As before, if you have any questions, probably best to put them in the chat, and between Dana and myself, we will try to get to them. And if we don't, our emails are at the end, and you can certainly feel free to send us an email, and we'll try to get the answers. If we don't know what they are off the top of our heads, we'll dig them up for you. Does that sound good, Dana?
That sounds great. And I can answer one question already. Raymond Vineyards is right in the middle of Napa County, just outside of this little town of St. Helena. So I just saw that question come up just a second ago.
Excellent. All right. So this is the order that we're going to taste in. We'll do the Old World Chardonnay, which is the Louis Jadot, and then we'll do the Simmi Chardonnay. What we thought we would do is let you pour them and start thinking about what you're tasting, and we'll talk a little bit about the winemaker and the place and all that. And then as we finish talking about each wine, we'll kind of see what everybody's tasting and maybe a bit about what the winemaker's notes are. And once we get finished with the Chardonnay, we'll do the same with the Rosé. So go ahead and pour your wines if you haven't done that. And yeah, we're gonna get going. So old world versus new world. And maybe some of you are thinking, why did we pick Chardonnay? There's an awful lot of people out there that are in the ABC club, anything but Chardonnay. I think maybe Chardonnay has been underappreciated in some cases. Maybe people have just experienced some of the extremes, and so they've sort of gotten turned off by what Chardonnay is. So maybe we'll convince a few of you that Chardonnay is something different than you thought. Maybe we won't. I don't know. What do you think, Dana?
I think from my own experience, I was ABC for quite some time. After I moved to California, I actually developed a little bit of a different palate towards it, an attitude. The style of Chardonnay actually changes. It does, at least in the new world. So the style has softened away a little bit from the oak and heavy oak and butter, and it's softened a little bit. So I would say every once in a while, just grab a bottle and try it. You never know how your palate has changed.
And how the wine has changed, right?
That's correct.
Yep. You know, I think the winemakers are kind of, they swung all the way to the left.
Yep.
Heavy oak, and now they're, like you said, maybe they realized they had gone a little too far. So let's see.
Yep.
So the first one is the Louis Jadot Chardonnay, and I can't see the chat, Dana, but maybe you can. I wonder if anybody can tell us what's weird about this wine label. This is a Chardonnay from Burgundy, from Louis Jadot. Anybody have any idea what's weird about this wine label?
I'm watching the chat. I don't think anybody. Oh, there you go. That's exactly right. David said it lists the variety and not the region. That's exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yes.
as many of you know, in the old world, they don't list the region. I mean, they don't list the grape, they list by region. So you might expect that this just says Burgundy on it or white Burgundy in little letters somewhere under there, but it doesn't do that. And that's because Louis Jadot, even though they've been making wine in Burgundy since the 1800s, is currently owned by two American sisters. And as soon as they took over the wineries, they made a huge change, at least with some of their labels, to make them for the American market. And American market doesn't understand necessarily what Bourgogne means on a label. They want to know that this is Chardonnay. So that's what this reflects. And yeah, good job, David. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting evolution of the old world take on wines. So this Chardonnay is from Burgundy, and Burgundy is, as you might remember, if those of you that tuned in last time, Burgundy is sort of in the central part of France on the eastern side. You can see it there, right above the Rhone Valley. And this particular wine comes from the Mâcon, which is also listed on this label. A little closer look at Burgundy, and you can see the Mâconnaise there, which is where this wine comes from. The Louis Jadot family has been making wine in Burgundy, as I think I said a minute ago, since the mid-1800s, and still family owned. Well, until they sold to the sisters, it was family owned completely. They produce wine in the Beaujolais region. They produce wine in the Foussay region and in the Mâconnaise, and a very, very reputable producer of wine in the Burgundy region. Anything to add to that, Dana?
I'm going to answer a question. Actually, they came through the chat, if that's okay. There was what gives Chardonnay that buttery flavor? And that has to do with a fermentation technique that changes one acid to another, and the byproduct of that fermentation process gives it that buttery smell and flavor and mouthfeel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. So let's see. So that is an old world Chardonnay. So take a sip if you haven't done that so far, and think about, besides buttery, what else you might be experiencing with this one. What do you think? Is this what you thought Chardonnay was supposed to be? Is this different than something you're used to? If you know Burgundy at all, you know that white Burgundy is Chardonnay. This is their main grape on the white side in this region. Nice, crisp, got some good apple sort of hints in it, got some good citrus aromas and flavors. What are you getting, Dana?
I get lemon and I get minerals right in the nose, right at first. And then the pear and apple comes in after that.
And of course, the minerals would come from the type of soil that we find in Burgundy.
Mm-hmm. And your old world wines tend to be a little lighter in body, a little lower in alcohol, higher acidity, and they tend to be very pairable with food, and sometimes are a little better with food.
Fair enough. So I think maybe some people don't know what acidity means when you talk about that. We really don't know from the group exactly how experienced everybody is. So maybe it would be useful for some people to kind of know, what does it mean when we talk about acidity in a wine?
It's hard to explain.
It's what makes your mouth tingle.
Yes.
You know, it's like sucking on a lemon. Think about that. That's the acidity part of it. I mean, it may not be to that extreme here, but it is certainly what makes your mouth water.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say structure, but that's better.
I don't know if it's better, but on the food side, acidity is what makes this wine go so well with food. I always think about acidity as kind of like a highlighter for food. It just brings out the flavors. Think about food that we eat and all of the condiments that we put on our foods. Typically, they have a lot of acid in them. It could be a lemon on fish. It could be ketchup. It could be mustard. All of those have a lot of acidic ingredients in them. And the reason we like them on a lot of our foods is because it brings out the flavors. And that's why a wine like this goes so well with food, is because that acidity really complements a lot of foods that we eat. Now, I wouldn't put this necessarily, I wouldn't recommend it with a big heavy meat to bring out foods, but fish and shellfish and, you know, aperitifs and a good sunset on the back porch are all good reasons to be drinking a wine like this. It's just lovely. It's got some good, you know, good, like you said, good minerality. The chalk and the limestone, I think, from that region say a lot about it. I'm going to leave you do the chats because I cannot, for whatever reason, see them in the, are there any?
Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
good. So keeping that wine in mind, let's move on and talk about the New World counterpart to this one. So this is Simmi, and Simmi is from Sonoma County. Sonoma is very close to where Dana is, just on the other side of the Mayacamas Mountains. So Sonoma, maybe not as well known as Napa Valley. In some cases, it's maybe more approachable in terms of the wines that they produce, or just visiting them. It's a little bit easier to get into places, but still very, very popular, and very well-known producers come from the Sonoma area. Sonoma is wedged between the Mayacamas Mountains on the east and the Pacific on the west. And there are some great opportunities for the grapes to experience the fog that comes in off the ocean. And those of you that have ever gone out in the morning when it's really foggy, you know how you get all wet even though it's not raining. Well, think about what that heavy fog does to grapes. It cools them down a lot, gives them a chance to rest. Even though Sonoma might be a really hot place, it gives the grapes a chance to rest in the evening and cool down before the sun comes back and gets them to continue with their ripening. And that's what gives these grapes their really good balance between the acidity and the sugars that are naturally in the grapes. That's why Sonoma is really well known for a lot of their things like Chardonnay and Pinot Noirs and things of that nature. What's also interesting about Sonoma is they have more soil types in that one county than in all of France. So does Napa, by the way. But what does that mean? It means that each vineyard or each place that has a different soil type can grow a different type of grape. And couple that with the fact that we get this fog coming in, and so the temperatures can fluctuate quite a bit. It gives Sonoma County producers a lot of flexibility. They can grow Zinfandel very, very well. They can grow Chardonnay very, very well. They can grow Pinot Noir. They can go Cabernet Sauvignon. All grapes, which if you look at the tech sheets on them, are very different in terms of what their requirements are for really good conditions. And Sonoma can handle that because of all this rich loamy soil on one side, volcanic rock on the other side, and everything that you can possibly imagine in between. So yeah, so if you don't know anything much about Sonoma, it might be a good time to start really thinking about what Sonoma looks like and what it has to offer in the wine region. In particular, Chardonnay is known for coming out of the Russian River Valley part of Sonoma, and this Simmi wine is really fun to talk about. So I want to show you about this lady. Her name is Isabella Simmi, and I just fell in love with her pictures. I have to just share them with you. This is the same lady. She took over in 1904. She had been, working with her father, and her father had taken her on like sales trips to try to sell the wine that he was making, and he passed away suddenly. She was 16 years old. And she took over the winery. Amazing. And then in 1933, she was the first woman, the first winery to open a tasting room, which is really interesting. Because if you think about 1933, that was right after Prohibition got lifted. And we weren't sure what we were doing. We really didn't have even much wine going around. And she decided that the way to get people into the winery was to open a tasting room and invite them in. So that's why she's first woman in wine history for a lot of different things. She had really a very innovative spirit. And I just, looking at these two pictures, can't imagine how she grew up in these gowns over here. And then you see her putting on an apron with pins all over it. It just seems like she must have been a really amazing woman. Sonoma County was actually settled in the wine world by some Mexican colonists back in the 1800s. So it's got a huge influence from that perspective as well. Where is Sonoma? On the maps, there's Sonoma right next to where Dana lives. So you can see it right there, wedged between the, well, you can see the mountains on the picture on the right. Those are the Mayacamas Mountains. And not too far from San Francisco, not too far from Sacramento. A very interesting, wonderful place to experience. So what do we think about this wine?
Oh, you should taste it.
Yeah, everybody should taste it. First of all, the smell. If you have some in your other glass, I would say smell the difference. I know some of you don't have anything left in your other glass. I know that. What do you smell that's different about them? Holy cow. Getting anything in our...
Somebody smells pepper and some cedar.
Okay.
What else do we have? Smoky oak. That's got to be from the New World.
Exactly. So if you wonder what oak smells like in a wine, that Simmi is the example of that. It is oaky. It's what they do. It's part of what they hang their hat on. It is, they call this a soft oak, actually. That might be up to your own interpretation, whether that is soft or not. But these are the exact same grape, 100% Chardonnay in both of these glasses. The difference is that when they made the Louisiana Chardonnay, they put it in stainless steel and let it, soften and age a little bit in that. And when they made the Simmi, they put it in oak barrels. And they clearly put it in oak barrels that had some life left in them because it picked up a lot of the oakiness from those barrels. So now's a chance for you to kind of compare these two. And see what you like. Do you like them both? Do you like one better than the other? Do they just have different purposes? Do they go with different foods, do you think? I think that maybe, like we were saying earlier, some of the winemakers that made Chardonnay especially in California went a little overboard for a while there with their oakiness. And so you felt like you were pulling splinters out of your mouth instead of tasting a nice, oak contribution to the wine, or just overwhelmed everything else. You couldn't get to the orange peels and the tangerine and all those sorts of things. So I think we kind of need to hear what the group is thinking about these. If you can see if you have any thoughts, Dana, or you can see any screen shared or thoughts, I'd appreciate that.
Apparently, the Gillantines and the other family that they're with, that I don't want to mess up their last name, they like the Old World best of these two.
Okay.
That brings up something. So I personally have an Old World palate as well. I tend to like the Old World wines. I 100% enjoy California wines and the New World wines. I just think they have different places and different purposes. The Old World wines, in my mind, be it white or red, tend to be a little bit more like a symphony. They're very subtle layers of flavors. You've heard that before, I know. Subtle layers of flavors and a little bit more complex. And the old world wines come in like a little bit more like a rock and roll show. It's like they're in your face with these fruit bombs, and they don't hide anything. They're all right there in your face. But I think they both have a wonderful place on the table next to food. And like you said earlier, on the back porch with paired with sunshine. So I'm so glad that we have these two different personalities of wine to choose from.
Yeah, they really are very personalities, right? They're really very different from one another. And
Yeah.
do you think you'd pair them with something different if you were to?
Oh, I personally, yes, I would. I think this particular old world wine would do a little bit better with a lighter fish or a poultry. The new world wine, the Simmi, would do better with a heavier, I would put this with pork or like grilled meats.
How about salmon on a cedar plank on the grill?
Yes, exactly. So, your heavier, bolder wines can kind of pair with a little bit heavier, bolder foods, and your lighter wines need to be. This is a little bit more of a salad wine, shellfish, something light, but both very summery. I almost would invite different friends to drink the different wines.
Well, I'd come for either.
Excellent. You're invited for either one.
Thank you. As soon as they open up travel, we're there.
Wonderful.
As
wonderful.
you know. What I thought was interesting when I was reading the text sheets on the Simmi, they suggested that a good pairing was with asparagus with hollandaise sauce, which you never pair asparagus with these wines. That's like one of the hardest things to pair with wine, but that hollandaise sauce, that big creamy thick sauce, I think makes the big difference. They even said like soft-boiled eggs and things like that. I could see like some kind of an eggs Benedict or something with this if you were doing brunch, right?
Oh, yes. Both beautiful wines. Awesome. Good choices.
Fun to compare.
Yes.
All right. You think we're ready to move on to rosé? We got any other comments, any other thoughts? I think we have maybe a minute or two.
Yep, we've got there's Brooks and all panelists like the New World, so we got some New World fans in there.
Excellent.
We have some egg dishes for Simmi. Suggest shrimp and grits.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Oh, which I miss terribly.
You want us to send you some grits? We can send you some Anson grits.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay.
They're imported around here, so.
What? Well,
they get instant grits here. They don't really understand.
I know. Remember, I came from Ohio and Indiana. They don't. Yeah. I don't know what that is either.
All right, switching over to rosé.
Good choices. All right. Yeah, so don't forget Sonoma. It's a place to be reckoned with, and getting more and more interesting things coming out of it all the time. But good old Isabella. Okay, so now, in the spirit of comparing old and new world, as Dana said, I love that comparison of the symphony and the rock and roll. I think that is, among a lot of the wine conversants, a good way to compare, sort of the philosophy of old world versus new world. The old world is subtle, and it's more, subtle is a good word. It's not in your face. It's a little bit more elegant, and the new world doesn't try to do that. They try to be big and bold, like you said, and kind of tell you exactly what it is you're drinking. Put the name on the label, and here's what it is. Take it or leave it. This is what we're doing. So in the spirit of the summer, and my favorite color, we decided we would maybe go for the rosé and see what you thought about this one. And these are kind of interesting wines to consider. So if you haven't poured them yet, please go ahead and pour your La Vieille Ferme and your Cambria. And we will do as before. So here's the La Vieille Ferme, which translates to Old Farm. For those of you that remember your French from way back when, or not so way back maybe. They call this the Rooster Wine, as you can tell why. So when I was talking to somebody about this one, oh yeah, the Rooster Wine, yeah. We know exactly which one that is. So this wine is really interesting for so many reasons. One, those of you that managed to get it, I wonder if you noticed the price tag. It is extremely inexpensive. I think mine was $6.99 because it happens to be the end of the season, perhaps, but it's never a very expensive wine. And maybe some of us discount wines because of that. You know, like it's inexpensive, it can't be good. And maybe you still think that after you taste it, I don't know. But this wine is known for being really, really fresh. They hit the market early in the spring with their current vintage. And what you might know about rosé is rosé should be consumed fresh. Old rosés just don't really do justice to the whole style of wine. So I would encourage you, if you have old rosés in your closet, to drink them quickly and then restock with fresh stuff, and maybe you'll understand what the difference between those are. So to say this one hits the market early means that they've got some pretty good resources behind them to get this wine to the market first off. So what we know about this, the producers, this is produced by the Perrin family. The Perrin family owns some pretty important labels in the Rhone Valley. So they own Beaucastel, which is a very high-end wine producer in Southern Rhone. And they also produce a lot of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is something you may or may not have heard of, but it is also a very well-known wine in Southern Rhone. And in Southern Rhone, when you make Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is something like the summer home of the Pope, 16 grape varieties are allowed to be in that wine. The Perrin family uses all 16 grape varieties to make their Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So
That's
have
white and red, correct?
white and red, exactly. Yes. So they have lots of resources behind them. I guess all that just to kind of tell you that they have lots of resources. They have great marketing. They have enough grapes around and available to them that they can produce this wine at a very inexpensive price. Because they make so many other things, they can make that happen. So about making rosé, might wonder how rosé is actually made, because there are no grapes that are the pink color that we use. And some of you will probably already know that when we make rosé, there's a couple of different ways we can make it. In this case, because of the other things that they do, they make this rosé by the Saunier method, which means that as they're on their way to making red wine, it's starting to ferment, and the skins are where all of the color is. So they're soaking the grapes in the fermentation vat to get the pigment out of the skins. And so it goes from pink to dark to dark to darker. Well, when it's at the pink stage, they bleed some of it off. That's the Saunier method. So it makes the red wine much more concentrated. Thus, they have the Beaucastel and they have the Châteauneuf-du-Pape and all that to use. And in the interim, they have made a rosé wine with some of the wine that they have literally siphoned off in the beginning. And that's the Saunier method. And that's the way they make this wine. It is, by the way, the oldest way of making wine. If you think back to the day of the aristocracy and all that, this was the wine of aristocracy. They liked the first press. The freshest wine that would come out of the fermentation tank was what the kings and queens, et cetera, were given as the best of all the best. Somehow we've lost sight of that. We can talk about that in a minute, but having said all that, this is La Vieille Ferme, and it is a wine that is made out of Grenache and Syrah and Cinsault mostly, which are very famous grapes from the Southern Rhone region. So those of you that joined us last time, again, you're probably sick of my map, but I love this map. It shows you where the Rhone is, just below Burgundy, and just above Provence, and along the Rhone River. And I don't know if you're familiar with Avignon, but you know that's a very famous artsy place in the world of the French. And a little closer in, this is the Rhone, kind of in a very simplified map. But the wine that we're talking about comes from the Cote de Ventu, which is that little turquoise area on the east side of the Rhone River. And the Rhone is very famous for these puddle stones, which are what they plant their vines in. The vines don't have dirt around them. They have these rocks way, way, way down deep. And it's a very harsh environment for grapes. The wind comes through there all the time. This is the land of blustery winds, so the grapevines stay low to the ground so they don't knock the grapes off the vine. And their southern Rhone is mostly known for Syrah, Grenache, and Cinsault, which are part of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And that's the wine of La Via Ferme. What do you got, Dana?
Oh, I've actually through there on another trip, and it was spring, and it was an extremely windy place. And all the vines and all the trees actually leaned to one direction. And so the bus that we were on also kind of drove like this the entire time we were through that region. It was a little scary, but beautiful region. If you ever get the opportunity to go, please go. These beautiful little signs off on the side of the roads that you can't hardly read because they're in French, but it tells you which little township you're in, and just vines everywhere. So beautiful place.
So what do you think of the wine?
Tastes like Rhone. I get strawberry and a little bit of watermelon on the front. And just like you said, it's very fresh, means it's very light and refreshing. And again, I would probably pair this with lighter fare, a salad, or cold shellfish.
Back porch.
Yeah, sitting outside enjoying
a beach wine. We might call this a beach
exactly.
wine.
Yes, yes. How about anybody else? We've got Bright on My Tongue, Great Summer on the Deck Sipping. And somebody asked, how old are those vines in the picture? That's hard to say. They're probably pretty old based on the size of the
diameter. Yeah.
Yes, they are. Those are, I would say every bit of 20 plus.
Oh yeah, I would say even more than that probably. Yeah. But that Mistral wind that comes through just is, like Dana said, is just brutal. And so these aren't very high off the ground. The perspective is not that these are, that I was on the ground taking these looking up. I took this picture and it was just straight ahead. They are not very high up because that's the only way to preserve the grapes on the vine. And once they fall to the ground, they're not good anymore. We can't use them. So we can't just pick them up off the ground and continue on. So that they're pretty protective of them as much as they can be in this really ridiculous, who thought of planting vines and all this?
Right.
Yeah.
And somebody's got slightly salty mineral finish, which is great for drinking in hot weather. So got somebody picking up on that minerality.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, somebody's been to Paris. This reminds us of the wines people drink on the lawn in front of the Eiffel Tower at dusk with friends. Takes us back to good memories. Good, good, good.
That's a great idea.
Yep. Can we go now?
Yeah, we can go now. This wine actually comes in a box also. You can buy this in a 3-liter box. I think for all the reasons we just said. So you could picnic with it, or you could go on to the beach and, take it reasonably with you. But think about French wine coming in a box. These people are pretty
made of wood.
Brave, right? I mean, they're pretty brave to do that because, at a time not all that long ago, they would have just been literally kicked out of the country for even thinking about putting their wines that have France on the label in a box.
which is a shame. I'm a huge proponent of alternative packaging for wine.
Absolutely.
Canned wine, box wine, because it's got the little plastic bag on the inside of it.
Yep.
I've even
Yep.
seen cartoned wine. I'm a huge proponent of all of those because it doesn't hurt the wine at all. And the types of wines that they would put in packaging like that is not going to be your highest end wines, which is fine, but it makes it more approachable and more portable. You can take it
Right.
you can take it to the pool, you can take it to the park where they don't allow glass and still enjoy a lovely glass of wine.
Exactly.
And the wines that they're putting in those packages are still very good quality.
Right. We just have to get over ourselves with that.
Well, it's just a perception. It is. It's just a perception.
Well, but you're not going to take a box of wine up to a table when restaurants open again. You can't hardly pour, from the box is a little tacky, maybe perhaps, but so
Yes,
you're
but
right. For some wines, it's not the appropriate thing, but for other wines, it does not affect the integrity of the wine at all.
No, not at all. And they're actually coming out, and you're going to see a lot more kegged wine where they actually have it on tap.
Exactly. Which will preserve a lot of the freshness, because remember it's the oxygen that's the problem. So
That's
the way
exactly
that
right.
wine goes bad is by being exposed to oxygen.
That's
So if
exactly
there's
right.
a bag inside the box, the bag is shrinking up and there's no oxygen attacking the wine. If it's in a
Keg.
barrel or in a tank, I'm sorry, then there's no oxygen in there, same
Right.
sort of thing. We're just
Yep.
preserving actually the quality of it. We just have to realize that that's the way it is. However, if wine is going in a cellar, it needs to be in a bottle with a cork, not a
Yes.
Swiss top, not a plastic cork. That's the only way
Agreed.
to age wine correctly in a
Yes.
cellar. We probably need to say that.
Yes, absolutely. And mags, your larger formats, will actually last longer than your 750s.
Did not know that.
Yep. Well, only because they age differently because of the size of the
Sure.
container itself.
Good to know.
Yep.
Okay. Yay. Any other thoughts on the subject?
Somebody has had the first can of wine and was surprised at how good it was. And can you briefly mention the other methods to make rosé?
Will do. So Sangria is one way to make it. The other way to make rosé wine is to go through fermentation like you're making a red wine, which means you put the grapes in the tank with the with the juice, and you let everything soak for a little while. And then instead of bleeding something off, you literally just remove the skins and the pulp and let the wine continue to ferment without any of those things. As you remove the skins, you're removing any more pigment, so it can't get any darker. What they don't do is add red wine to white wine to make pink wine. I mean, maybe you do that at home, but in general, we don't do that in the industry. So that would be the other way to do it, is just to let the skins from the red grapes soak in the fermentation tank for a brief period of time and then remove them. And so I hope what that's telling you is that it could be, there's various colors of pink. It doesn't have to be this light pink, which is beautiful, by the way, but it could be a much darker pink and not imply that it's any sweeter than this is. I think when people see dark pink wine, they think that it has to be sweet, and it can be, but so could this if they stopped fermentation early. So the sweetness and the color of pink don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. That has been totally a marketing thing. White Zinfandel was our wine of choice. It got us into rosé wines. It had a super duper place in the market at the time, but it was bright pink. And so now every time people see pink wine, they think it's going to be sweet. And it can be. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with some sweetness, but it doesn't have to be.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on that?
One more thing on the white Zinfandel. Actually, really glad that trend happened, believe it or not, because had that trend not happened, they would have ripped up all of those Zinfandel vines, and we would no longer have old vine Zin that now comes from those. So the wines that is coming from those vines right now are all your red Zinfandels. But back in the 80s, that was your white Zinfandel. And so I'm very thankful that happened. So, because it saved the vines.
Sure. So back to Sonoma, where they do a lot of Zinfandel, right?
Yep.
it kept the winemakers afloat as well, because it was a
Yes.
time when they were really struggling with the American market not appreciating wine at all.
Yep. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier, and the fact that the winemakers kind of, they're sensitive to the market. So therefore they're changing the style of their wines to fit with the palate of the American people. So that's what, you know, we saw that with the Chardonnays. They went really oaky and buttery. Now they're kind of coming back. Well, we had wine that was really sweet. Now it's not so sweet anymore. Now we've gone to red, and who knows where it'll take us. It's an adventure.
It is an adventure. And then when you add climate change in there, all kinds of other things, you know,
Right.
change the whole conversation, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. So before we run out of too much time here. So the last one, the New World Rosé, is Pinot Noir Rosé from Cambria, which is in another region in California. And I was really excited to learn about this wine for a lot of reasons. One, the color is beautiful, but it comes from a region that is really an up and coming region in California. Recently, I went to a conference, a virtual conference, of course, on the Society of Wine Educators, and they spent an awful lot of time talking about the Central Coast of California. So for those of you that don't know, California has some great big viticultural areas. Within those great big ones are smaller ones. So one of the big ones is Central Coast, and that's where Santa Maria Valley is, within Santa Barbara. And I was really excited to learn about it. And it's a very much an up and coming region in terms of what we're seeing coming out of California. So it's right there on the northern perimeter of Santa Barbara. And what is really interesting about this region is that, you know, how most mountain ranges go north to south, these go east to west, or west to east, however you want to think about it. So they transverse, they mess up everything. And so there's a lot of interesting dynamics that come from the ocean into the gap that get settled in the valley itself, in between all these interesting mountain ranges. And it's actually almost like a funnel. Instead of a valley that's just a dip, it's almost like a funnel system. So you can imagine what would get trapped in there in terms of fog, in terms of warm temperatures or cool temperatures. And that has a huge effect on the grapes themselves, since we're talking so much about you know, the environment and how that affects it. So it's a really dynamic wine region, and we're seeing a lot of interesting flavors. They say that the Santa Maria Valley has one of the longest growing seasons in California. And again, it's because of all this sort of interesting terroir, or, you know, that we see in this region. Supposed to have, if you go to the website for Santa Maria Valley and you look at the things they offer to the travelers, they have all kinds of goofy, fun things. So it's clearly a place with a personality that is very different from many of the other places we visit. They have something called, I had to write it down, the swirl machine artwork and analysis. So as you're swirling your wine and it flops on the sheet, so they've got a little machine that's going to analyze what kind of a wine drinker you are based on the artwork that you've created. It's silly, of course it is, but you know, that's the sort of character of it. They talk about their bicycle trails that go through the region, and they want you to dive in and enjoy it. And this is just a very interesting, I think, very interesting region for a lot of reasons. Not to mention the fact that, as you see there, it says sustainably certified, or certified sustainable, sorry. And very much into sustainability of all sorts. In particular, Cambria is very much into that. This wine is actually owned by the Jackson family, and this is where two daughters of Jess Jackson grew up. They grew up on this estate, and Julia in particular, some of you may have Cambria wine that says Julia Vineyards on there. Julia in particular is very, very much into sustainability and making sure that the wines that they create do not violate any, you know, any kind of ecological situation that might be happening in this region. What else we got? What are you thinking?
So got some that don't like the smell of it. Can't get past.
Okay. Can you give it a swirl and maybe blow some of that off, or no?
I don't know.
I can see that.
It's different than the Old World. And it does have a little bit more of a pungent smell,
Mm-hmm.
but I can still smell fruit and mineral.
A lot of fruit,
And,
yeah.
Yep. But, you know, it's everybody's palate is different. So
maybe some dried earth in there, kind of.
yeah, it's a little earthier than I would have expected for
Yeah, certainly more than this
wine.
one. So again, you know, if you have some in your other glass, by comparison, there's a big difference there.
Nope. Tried a couple of different things, and a couple other people don't care for the smell of it.
Okay.
Yep. Got another comment that said, curious about why you suggested an Oregon Pinot if the Cambria couldn't be found in the store.
Okay. There are a lot of great Oregon Pinot Noirs that are rosé, yeah, and of course and red. But
So it's just availability.
this one was a little bit more challenging to get than I thought.
Mm.
That's why I think we sent something out to everybody saying, if you can't get this one, just get a rosé of Pinot Noir.
Right.
And so Oregon is known for that, yeah. So how does the Oregon compare to the French? Has anybody got a comment on that?
See, when I go back and smell the Old World Rosé,
Oh my gosh.
it's so floral. After smelling the New World, it's like almost like honeysuckle or jasmine.
What a difference, right?
Mm-hmm. And somebody said that we like the Oregon better. I don't know if they liked the Oregon better over the Old World or Oregon better Cambria.
I'm guessing over the Old World. It's probably Cambria or Oregon.
Right. And it's so funny to see, you know, to know that there's so many people that are in one camp or the other, but some people can traverse between the old and the world, old and the new world.
And how about comparing their philosophies about Chardonnay versus Rosé, Old World, New World? Wonder if can you find some, among all of you, can you find some commonalities, or are you thinking it's just kind of bottle by bottle?
Sorry. Somebody said they liked the Gamecock Rosé better.
Fair enough.
Love it. Love it. Even if it's just for the label. Yes, you can love it just for the label.
Yes, that's why we picked it, right?
Exactly. We liked Oregon better over the Old World. So that's, they clarified that. So they liked it than the Old World.
So in this region, they make a lot of, they're known for their Pinot Noirs. They are known for their Pinot Noirs, and they can make a really good profit on Pinot Noirs. So their rosé of Pinot Noir, it has been immensely successful, whether or not you agree with that or not. It has been immensely successful. So they are under some pressure to continue to make the rosé, but honestly, the real money is in the Pinot Noir. And so that is why probably this was a hard one to find. It's limited production because they want to put their grapes where they can find the most profit. This region, by the way, has also been featured in Wine Spectator as being one of the top 100 regions for wine, or no, top 100 wineries. 2 of them are in this region. Let me get my data correct. 2 of them are on the top 100 wineries in the country. So there's a lot to be said for looking at Santa Maria. Again, it's not our common, ones that we think of when we think of California wines, but I'm hoping that people are sort of broadening their thoughts about what is out there.
I've been through this region, I've been through the Santa Rita hills, not the Santa Maria. So Santa Rita is just south of the Santa Maria region that this wine comes from. And they are very into their clones of Pinot. Chasing your go into, they'll say, well, this is a Pinot of clone 444, and this clone is 179. And I have no idea what any of that means, by the way, but they're very proud of their clones. And so it's just funny that the different regions kind of cling to different factoids and the different personalities that make up their own wine. So I'd be interested to know what clone of Pinot Noir this is.
We're trying to do something to stand out maybe from everybody else, huh?
Okay, what do we got? Somebody came back and answered your question on the Chardonnay. Somebody loved the Louis Jadot. Somebody else, Christina, likes the whites and rosés to be light and easy and the reds to be bold and strong. So old world for me for the rosé, but it sounds like she likes new world reds.
Interesting.
Regarding climate change, what changes are winemakers seeing in the quality of grapes, wines, etc.? Beneficial at all or no? I'm going to take a crack at that.
Go for it.
Fine. So I think the New World, I'll speak for just the region that I'm in and the information that I know just from being at work. It's a challenge every year, but they do the best they can with what they have, and they have the knowledge and the experience to adjust what they've got based on what they get in that year. So I had a question earlier about smoke taint because of all the fires.
Yeah.
Know how to work with that. So that's, I think, the one really kind of neat thing about the New World is they're not restricted by tradition and wine law. They're allowed to make those decisions and sometimes have great success based on, oh, well, this is what we had and it turns out really great. Old World, they're a little bit more caught in their traditions, and they have to stick to a little bit more of a traditional plan that they can't really gee and haw with it too much. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that Old World is going to get restless. I sat through a session on climate change at the Society of Wine Educators last week, and what they were really coming down to is that some grapes are going to do great, some aren't, and some regions are going to have to close up essentially, or alter what they're growing. And we might find some very new regions that we never thought could grow grapes being very successful. One that I had read about a little bit before I went to Society was Patagonia. They are actually growing grapes in Patagonia. So the Old World, which is, like you said, sort of stuck on there. This is Burgundy. They have to grow Pinot Noir. They have to grow Chardonnay. They might find that they might need to open up their minds a little bit and try something else as climate change has an effect on them. Mm-hmm. Also, what we heard was that, somebody would say that harvest comes earlier than it ever did before in a lot of regions. Mm-hmm. And grape, if you had an old bottle versus a newer bottle, you could taste a big difference. And a lot of that difference wasn't the aging so much as the climate that the grapes grew up in, even if it was the same region. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was very interesting. Good question.
I had another question that you might have some insight on. What is the most exciting innovation in winemaking today? Also curious about how many, innovations in winemaking. Any information on that from your conference?
Not so much for the conference. They're doing some interesting fermentation type tanks where they're mixing stainless steel with wood. Banffy, mm-hmm. for instance, has, it used to be either you fermented in stainless steel or you fermented in oak, but they've kind of got this combination so they can kind of modify how much oak is going into the wine. That's a really important one. Other than that, it's probably, I don't think there's a lot of innovations that I heard about as far as mm-hmm. winemaking goes. I know we have a lot of new wine regions coming open, a lot of
That's what I was going to say. Yep.
A lot of, I think there's several that have petitioned for viticultural status in the United mm-hmm. States, but not as far as wine making goes. Oh, how about the fermentation egg, the cement egg?
Yep, that's another thing I was going to say. So one of our wineries over in Sonoma, so we have another winery over in Sonoma, actually is kind of dabbling in that a little. They actually buried one of those things up to its neck and then put wine in it just to see. So it's actually not a new innovation. It's like
that's
dabbling
Amphora.
in the old,
Yeah.
right, exactly, yes. So they're kind of dabbling in the old, and I think they put ferment in it, the grape ferment.
Oh my gosh.
Really old school with it, yes.
Interesting. So what's
That
old?
was-
What's new is old. Oh, what's old is new again, right? Or whatever. However that
Right.
goes.
Right, exactly. Somebody else said, liked the Old World Chardonnay and Rosé. We did the Viking cruise on in Rhone and the Rhine. Oh, very cool.
Oh, that is so fun.
Yeah.
Nice.
That was a really awesome way to see both those regions too.
Yeah. So sorry, I forgot I have this map here as well. That's where Santa Maria is. If you were wondering, and then the picture on the right shows you a bit about the Mayacamas Mountains. Wrong region, the east-west mountains that sort of transverse this particular region. Just to give you, a clue on that one. And yeah, so I think we have met our time as far as what everybody was expecting. We're happy to stay on for a few more questions if there are any.
Somebody asked how many people were on this, how many participants we had, and I don't have that number. I don't know if maybe Haven, when she comes back on, she can.
Well, I see 44 on
There
here
she is.
somewhere, 44 comments,
Oh.
30 people, which means 30 groups. We don't even know how many are in a group.
True.
Yeah, if y'all want to put in the comments like last time, if you have more than one person at your tasting, we'd love to know. Sandy, it does look right that there are 30 people on video right now, at least. But
I think we had like, I don't know how many signed up, 60 something, right? So
yeah, lots of people are saying they have multiple people at their tasting.
Yep. Oh, somebody's got 4.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was great. Definitely made me want to try some more old versus new comparison.
Yeah, it's fun to think about. I hope everybody has an open mind though, and that these are just 2 examples and we have so many more that we could pull out and talk about. But Haven, thank you so much for this chance. It was really fun to do.
Yes.
And thank you all for participating with us. And of course, thank you to Dana, my favorite student ever.
My pleasure.
I miss you so much. I so miss you. As
miss you
soon as we
too.
can travel, we're coming out there to
Yay!
check
I
out
will
that
welcome
place
you with
that you're.
very open arms. And actually, you know what? That goes for anybody else. If anybody has any questions or suggestions or wants suggestions on what to visit once we can travel again and you want to come out and visit Napa or Sonoma Valley, please email me. I'm happy to email you back suggestions where the crazy place that I'm in or some other not so crazy around here in the valley, some places that are even not as well known. Just I'm happy to give you that information.
You are so sweet. Thank you so much.
You're
Haven,
very
we
welcome.
really appreciated this. This was fun. Thank you for the
Yes,
opportunity.
thank you.
Of course. Thank you both so much for being here and leading this. And thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, stay
Mike.
safe, everybody.
Hold on. My email wasn't on the slide.
Oh, I'm
Can
so sorry.
you? No, it's quite all right. Quite all right. If you just email Dr. Strick, she can forward it to me. How about that?
There you go. Will
Awesome.
do. Definitely will do.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.
All right.
Stay safe.
Everyone have a good
And those of
evening.
you that are going back to school tomorrow, one way or another, also stay safe. We're all in this boat
Yes.
together, so we're going to have a good semester. Yay.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.